Hello there, you're listening to Ram Speaks, and today we're going to talk about the Janata Curfew. I know, it's a little late, but anyway, there is a lot of information in this. I promise you that this is going to be short and this is going to be filled with information. So, gear up. Some of us defeated the whole purpose of the Janata Curfew. At 5 in the evening of Sunday, we heard the sounds of clapping and the shank dhwani and people clanging their plates and all of that. And when we looked out of the window, we saw about 10 people fist pumping, high-fiving, shaking hands and all of that. The last part was really disappointing. The point of the Janata Curfew was not showing your political allegiance to someone or sending forwards and then coming out on the streets at 5 to show support. Self-quarantine was a point of the exercise. Social distancing was a point of this exercise. But what happened instead was dieting for an entire month and then at the end of it, binging on biryani for 3 days straight. Now, why are people talking so much about social distancing when we have about 500 cases in a country of 1.3 billion? Because this is a classic case of an exponential spread of infection. In the initial days of this outbreak, WHO came out and said that every infected person infects about 2.6 people on average. On day 1, we have 1 person infected. The WHO said that one generation of transmission is about 5 to 6 days. At the end of the 6th day, this person would have spread it to 2.6 people. Now let us go with 2 to make the calculation simpler. At the end of, say, the generation 1, 2 new people have the infection. At the end of the 2nd stage, the number of new patients is 4. 3rd, 8. 4th, 16, 32, 64. At the end of the 10th stage, the number is 1024. At stage 10, in 6 days, we would have 1024 new cases of the infection. From then on, we're looking at somewhat uncontrollable transmission. At stage 13 or generation 13, we're looking at 8,192 cases in 6 days. That's 1,300 cases in a day. You might say, well, it does not matter, the virus cannot kill me. And if you're 40 years of age or younger, you're probably right. The mortality rate is nearly that of your common cold. But after that age, the mortality rate goes to 0.4%. for people between 40 and 50, 1.3% for people between 50 and 60, 3.6% for people between 60 and 70, 8% for people between 70 and 80, and 16% for people above 80. And yes, curiously, that's also exponential. Now, if you visit corona.help and look at the statistics, you would see an exponential growth in the number of infection. Even look at India's statistics. Even with the smaller sample size compared to the global statistics, we see an exponential growth. The infection history as well as the daily change are both exponential trends. At the same time, if you look at the recoveries, the global recoveries, the curve is almost linear. Now let's talk something about what is known as the incubation period. This is something interesting. Suppose this person X caught the virus on the 1st of March. He may not see any symptoms until, say, the 7th or the 10th of March. He has the infection, but he may not have the fever or the cough until the 10th day. But he could still spread the virus. The reason the government, or in fact, most governments across the world are asking for a quarantine is so that those infected contain the virus within themselves and not give it to others. The body of the infected will deal with the virus. If you have good immunity, your body will be successful in making the antibodies that kill the virus before the virus does any noticeable damage to your body. An incubation period is the time between someone getting infected and the time the symptoms start to show. For the regular cold, the incubation period is a couple of days. In case of this strain of coronavirus, the incubation period is 2 to 14 days. And there are some asymptomatic cases as well, meaning they don't show any signs of the infection. During this time, while you may be carrying the virus, you will not know that you have the virus. You might go on with your lives, but you could be spreading the virus around, even when you're not showing symptoms. Now, another important aspect of this is community transmission. Let us assume that you're at a bus stop along with 20 others. One of those standing about 6 feet from you has the infection. He coughs and splashes droplets on 4 others standing right next to him. One of the 4, is a teller at a bank. Another is a cook at a cafeteria of an IT firm whose building houses about 7,000 people, for all we know. Another is a TTE, and fourth, a priest at a temple. All these 4 interact with hundreds of people in a day. Imagine how the virus could now spread. This is a dangerous phase, and we want to cut down on the transmission before we reach a point where the situation becomes uncontrollable. The governments have suspended public transport services, imposed Section 144 in over 70 districts. The companies are allowing their employees to work from home because we want to break the chain, stop the spread. Because whether we like to admit it or not, and our governments will admit it, we do not have the necessary medical facilities that match with China or Italy. We are not medically equipped to handle the outbreak at the scale of our population. We are better off preventing it. Now, here is how all life forms work. The life form takes birth and multiplies. To multiply, it needs a friendly environment. In case of a virus, this friendly environment is another life form, also known as a host. The virus needs a host to survive. It cannot survive for long on lifeless surfaces. When the virus finds a host, it starts to multiply at the cost of the cells in the host. This process ends up killing the host after some time because the host cannot survive without its organs. And when the host dies, the virus also dies because, like we saw, it cannot survive on lifeless surfaces for long. The host, although, has systems to protect itself, just like how humans have it. I mean, every host has systems to protect itself, otherwise it wouldn't survive, right? As a species, that species wouldn't survive. In our case, we have the human immunity. Our immunity creates antibodies that stop the virus from multiplying. It interferes with the way the virus multiplies. So, the virus has to die either way. The question is, who dies before, the virus or the host? And we want to make it the former case, where the virus dies first. The antibodies that are created against the virus, that we create against the virus, will live in our body for a period of time. So if the virus comes back to attack us within this time, so the virus needs new healthy hosts, unless it can mutate. That's a different story altogether. Luckily, corona does not seem to mutate at the rate that is dangerous. Now, when the virus does not find new healthy hosts, the pandemic dies. Social distancing comes in the way of virus finding new hosts, which is the first half of the story. And the second half of the story is handling the hosts whom the virus has infected. And for that, we need resources. So in some ways, if we fail at the first half, there is a good chance that we don't succeed at the second half as much as we expect. Right? So when people fall ill with the coronavirus, about 15% of the sick, they need critical medical care. The hospitals admit these people and treat them. At one point or another, the patient stops using the medical resources, making it available for the new patients, because by then he's cured and he doesn't need hospitalization anymore. Now, if the virus spread is exponential, we will run out of these medical resources and will fall short of them for new patients. And that will lead to a drastic increase in the death rate. To avoid this situation, we should ensure that the number of people that get infected is less than the amount of available medical resources. This way, more people can survive. Now, because the incubation period is high and the infected persons can spread the infection even when they're not showing symptoms, we are in more trouble because the number of those who need critical care shoots straight up because we don't realize that we are spreading infection. That makes us helpless because it takes us by surprise, and we want to avoid this. We want our hospitals staffed. At the same time, we do not want the healthcare professionals to overwork and burn themselves out. Achieving this is in our hands. Now, let us keep politics aside on this one. When the Prime Minister asked us to self-quarantine ourselves, to maintain social distance, while we may not agree with everything that he said, we must acknowledge that the social distancing part is critical, and he's got that right. Please look at his speech as that from the executive head of our country and not a politician. Of course, this does not mean that you do not criticize the government for its blunders. But let's keep our political differences aside on this one and work on this not as Indians, but as human beings. People are right in saying that this is not about the borders or races. This is about we the humans. We must stand united as humans in this. Let us fight this disease as a species. Then there are those who say that the virus cannot harm them. It may be true, but what if you interact with a 70-year-old who has chronic breathing issues? What if you interact with someone who's got immunity issues? The virus would eat away at his lungs and he would suffocate to death. Let that sink in for a second. You'll have blood on your hands. Will you be able to live with yourself for the rest of your life if you knew that someone died because of your careless attitude? At the same time, let's not panic. That brings no good. All we need at this moment is honesty. If you feel ill, or you know you've been in physical touch with someone who's ill, stay away from others. Contain the virus in you and let your body fight it out. Seek medical help if you're unable to handle it. But please do not attend parties or go to office or travel with others. Quarantine yourself and stay away from others for 4 to 8 weeks. You'll literally save lives. Now let's stop thinking that we may get the virus and start acting as though we already have the virus. Thank you for listening. I hope this was informative, and let me know on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook. I am Ram Iyer on all of these 3 platforms. Have a great day ahead.